Welcome to Satsang. So beautiful to be together. Starting with, as always, with one of the questions that comes in advance from our online audience, and then we'll open it up to any questions that anyone here has. So we have a microphone right there in the center, so if you have a question, feel free to just come up to the microphone and ask it. But we'll start with one of the ones that's come in advance for our family joining from online. We are already whole and complete. What does this statement exactly mean? Why then do we keep chasing and accumulating things all of our lives and live in stress most of the time? This is asked by Parag Shah. It's a great question. So this is the nature of ignorance. When we pray, Om Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. That's the prayer. Oh God, lead me from falsehood to truth. Lead me from the darkness of ignorance in which I suffer and I bring suffering unto others into the light of wisdom in which my suffering ends. Lead me from the identification as this individual mortal body that is born and changes and dies to the real identification as one with the divine, as consciousness, as soul, as infinity, as Satchit Anand, as Brahman, as that absolute infinite supreme. Lead me into that awareness, that identification. Who we are at the core is whole and complete because we are made not just by the divine, but of the divine. If God is whole and complete and perfect, well then so are we. If the water of the ocean is made up of H2O and NaCl, so we've got water and we've got salt. If that's what the water of the ocean is made of, well then that's what the water of the wave is made of. By nature, the wave is made of exactly the same stuff that the ocean is. You can't say, well, this is what the wave is made of, but that's what the ocean is made of. By definition, the wave is made of the ocean, therefore, whatever is the content, the properties, the characteristics of the ocean are the same as the properties of the wave. In the same way, whatever the characteristics, the properties, the virtues of the divine, by whatever our religion may be, whatever way we conceive of God, it's always whole and complete. There's no religion I know of that believes that God just only exists in this corner over here or in that box over here. That's the difference between how most of us think of us versus God. God is infinite. God is whole. We are just, these little fallible beings. The truth of who we are is divine. It is infinite. It is that which never changes. It is eternal. However, when we identify only as the body and the story through Maya, obviously we lack a lot. We're never smart enough, we're never successful enough, we're never beautiful enough, we're never happy enough. We're always lacking in some way. It's the nature of nature. I mean, whether you weigh 100 pounds or you weigh 300 pounds, whether you wear a size 0 or a size 28, either way, it is finite. There is a limit, and it is never enough. You can never have enough things be enough. When we identify only as the physical body and story. So that's the ignorance, that's the Maya. To re-identify as the truth of who we are is to realize we are whole and complete. But Parag has asked another attached question about why we go on accumulating and desiring more and more things. And it's interesting because on the surface, it's to make ourselves feel full. But it goes deeper than that. Yes, we want to feel more and bigger and fuller. But there's a deeper reason than just greed or desire or insecurity. And the deeper reason is we are trying to return to our true nature. We are trying to return to our source. Everything in nature is always returning to its source. Why does water always go down? Downhill, not uphill. Drop water from the top of the roof, even the top of the tallest building. It's going to come down. Why? Because water's source is the ocean, the earth. It's always going back to its source. Fire rises up. Why? Fire's source is the sun. We can use words like gravity and density, but these are just words to describe a phenomenon that has existed long before we had words like density and gravity. Gravity existed long before the apple fell on Newton's head and he came up with an equation for it. So these words just describe a phenomenon that already exists. Why does the phenomenon exist? Because everything is trying to return to its source. Our source is the divine, is infinite, is fullness, Purna. That's who we are, that's what we are. So in this crazed and addicted and compulsive shopping, eating, grabbing, desiring, it's a way, the reason that we want it so badly is because for a brief moment, when my stomach is stretched to its outer limit and I could not even drink a spoonful of water because I've eaten so much, even in the pain of that stomach stretched to its limit, there is a sense of joy inside of feeling so full. In some way, I have returned to the true fullness of who I am. Now, obviously, the problem with that is it doesn't last. The food gets digested, it gets pooped out, it turns to fat. And the fullness that we have is not a fullness of chapatis. It's a fullness of the nature of who we are. So that stretched out stomach is not actually helping us return to the truth of who we are, but the reason that we crave it and want it and eat until we cannot move. How many times have you sat there feeling like, oh my God, I need a wheelbarrow to get me out of this place? Why do we do that? Because on a very deep level, that sense of fullness returns us to source. Why do we go shopping and buy things we don't need that we're just going to stick in our closet? We're bored, we're frustrated, we're sad, we've been rejected. What do? Shopping therapy. Why? Why do new shoes, new clothes? Why does it make me feel better? Because on some very deep level, who I am has expanded. Now I was this much. Now I'm this much plus all of the new shoes and the new clothes and the new dining set and this and that. Even if I never wear them, I throw them in my closet. But there's a sense inside me that I have expanded. Hence, temporarily, superficially, I feel better. But it's important to remember and understand where these cravings come from, because they're not bad. The problem is we try to satisfy them in ways that just injure our health, empty our checkbooks and our wallets, don't get us any closer spiritually. But the urge, the yearning, is a yearning of a return to source. So that's why we do it. But ultimately what we need is to just remember I am full. I don't need another pair of shoes to know it. I can only wear one pair at a time. I don't need to own half of the department store to feel full. I am full. In fact, that half of the department store now just suffocates me. Now I need to find a place to put it. Now I need to figure out how to pay off my credit cards. Our spiritual practice is to recognize and realize and experience that fullness within us. Wonderful. Yeah, other questions? Any question that anyone has? It's always a matter of who's going to have the courage to raise their hand first. Okay, well, I'll give you another shot. We'll take another one that came in advance, and then you can work up the courage. Are self-knowledge and attainment of God the same or different? This is asked by Avinash Kacha. The challenge arises when we give English definitions for ultimately what began as Sanskrit terms. So the word knowledge, for example, self-knowledge. My self-knowledge could be, I'm 53, I was born in 1971, come from Los Angeles, I'm female, about 5'3", been in India 28 years. Knowledge of the self. I'm a strict vegetarian, vegan, other than when I'm in the ashram. Knowledge of the self. But not the real self, not the capital S self, not the knowledge that is self-realization or God-realization. So the question depends on how we define knowledge. I tend to use it very simply and say kind of capital S self or capital K knowledge to distinguish it. Because sometimes self-knowledge just means, hey, you know, when you do that, it really triggers me. I really don't like to be around people who act in this way. This is difficult for me. That's a trigger. I get upset about that. That's actually very good knowledge. It's insight. And it helps us in our interpersonal relationships. It helps us emotionally. It helps us understand why certain things make us so angry. नहीं तो कभी-कभी लगता है कि इतना एंग्री में क्यों हो गया? ठीक है, थोड़ा सा चीज़ तो किया जो नहीं करना चाहिए था, लेकिन इतना एंग्री क्यों हुआ? This type of insight and introspection and knowledge is very good. But it's not knowledge of the self. It's knowledge of the psyche. It's knowledge of your patterns. And again, good, beneficial, worth your time. It's what the whole field of psychology and therapy and insight is all about. I highly recommend it. And it's not the same as attainment of God. But when you think of self-knowledge as kind of capital S self, capital K knowledge, in which I recognize that who I am is not the body, is divine, is eternal, is unchanging, is one with all, is not bound by the body. When I actually realize experientially, because sometimes knowledge can come from a book. I read a book, pick up a book on Vedanta. It says, Tattvam asi, thou art that. Ah, okay, so that's who I am. Okay, well, that's a way of knowledge. Now I know. But I don't really know. Because when someone's mean to me, I still react, or I cry, or I'm mean to them. So I know it because I read it in a book, or I heard it in a lecture. I could answer it on an exam if the exam said, you are A, your body, B, your thoughts, C, one with the divine. I know the answer is C. I could get an A on the exam. But I'm still hurt when someone's mean. I still react. I still crave. I still have a voice in my head that says, you're lazy, you're stupid, you're ugly, you're irresponsible. Why did you say that? Or how dare they? Who do they think they are? I'll show them. So I know it, but I don't know it. I've got book knowledge, but not real knowledge. In order for self-knowledge to be the same as attainment of God, it has to be an experiential knowledge. I have to know it in my cells. Every bit of me has to know it. So when things happen in the world to the body, whether it's illness, whether it's accident, whether it's physical pain, whether it's ego pain, it doesn't impact me. Because I realize it's not who I am. It isn't me. That's the knowledge. That's the real knowledge. So if that's what you mean by self-knowledge, then yes, it is the same as attain, because what does attainment of God mean, right? Typically when you attain something, you get it. Like you didn't have it before and now you get it. I have attained a job. I have attained now I have it. But you've always had God. You can't go anywhere without God. God is who we are, in us, as us, everywhere. There's nothing that isn't God. So attainment of God, what does that even mean? How can you attain that which you are? How can you attain that which everything is? Favorite stories of this man who's a great sadhak and devotee, and he's wanting enlightenment and experience of God. Goes everywhere, does everything. Nothing seems to work. He finally gets fed up and frustrated. And he sits down on the banks of a river. And he says, fine, forget it, God. Forget it. Like, I get it. Hone wale nahi hai mere liye. Not going to happen for me. And at that moment, this fish jumps up out of the river into the air and starts flapping in the air, yelling, water, 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 I need water. And the man says, you stupid fish, go back in the water. You were in the water. You're surrounded by water. There's nothing but water. Now you've jumped out of the water and you're flapping around, yelling for water. Just go back in the water. And the fish, because it's a story and fish can talk, says to the man, and you stupid man, you are yelling for God, but you are in God, just as I'm in the water. But even more so because the water is not in me, but God is in you. There is nowhere you can go that God is not there. But just like I'm flapping around in the air, you're flapping around in your mind, running here and there. Just go back inside. Go back inside. So that knowledge of self has to be something that we actually experience deeply within us, that we know it. So it's not an attainment of God, like I got God from somewhere. Finally, God was happy with me and came. Pujya Swamiji always says, your sadhana does not bring God. People think, oh, I'll do these prayers, I'll do this mantra, I'll do this much meditation, and then God will come. He says, your sadhana does not bring God. Your sadhana clears your vision so you can see God who has always been there. So we're not attaining God. What we are attaining is God realization. The awareness that we are living in God. So in that case, yes, it's the same as self-realization. Great. Anybody courage yet? Wonderful. Namaste. Can you come forward and speak into the mic? Yeah. It's on. It's on. You just have to talk right into it.
We, as a parents, always try that our kids should go on the right path. And we always guide them, preach them, teach them, and do everything, whatever we can do. But still we find...
इसको आप पकड़ लो उनके लिए, है ना? Side से पकड़ लो उनके लिए बस.
But still we find that they go on the wrong path and they do something wrong in their life. So as we also, as a parent, we still make some mistakes in our life and all that. So my question is, we don't have the superpower to control the things, but God has. And we all are kids of God. So why He make us to do the wrong things? Why don't He stop us by doing all these things? हमें सद्बुद्धि क्यों नहीं देता है कि हम कोई गलत ना करें?
Beautiful, wonderful question. So, कभी-कभी मैं भी ऐसे सोचती हूँ कि ये जो free will भगवान ने हमको दिया, तो पता नहीं शायद उनको कभी लगता होगा कि हमको देने में वो थोड़ा सा गड़बड़ हो गया. I don't know. But I think sometimes maybe God would regret giving us this free will. But it's been given. We're not making very good use of it, that is for sure. But it's been given. And once that free will has been given, God is not going to come in and run our lives for us. That's part of the Leela. Part of the Leela is that we, through our own bhav, through our own buddhi and shuddhi, our intelligence, our purity, through our practice, through our commitment, that we come closer and closer to God. God is not going to yank us close. फिर अनंत खत्म हो जाते. The whole point of the Leela is that we go through these karmic incarnations making the wrong choices, getting the bitter fruit of our karma, and eventually we realize enough is enough. The vision becomes clear, and we come back to God. But if there were not, think about any game. I don't know much about video games, but when I grew up, we used to play board games, and there was a board game that we used to play all the time called Chutes and Ladders. And it was just a game. You had a piece, and you began at the beginning, and you would have to get to the end. But along the way, if you landed on a certain square, you had to shoot, means it would send you back. Then you had to start all over again. Sometimes you'd land on a square and it would be a ladder and it would send you ahead. But you had to walk it, and that was the fun of the game. If both parties, both players just took their pieces and put them at the end of the board, तो फिर खेलने में मतलब कोई मजा नहीं है. The whole point of the game is we play and you work to get there. Any game, any movie, any TV show, any drama, there's always got to be some kind of struggle. Otherwise, it's not interesting. If you hand a script to a producer in Bollywood or in Hollywood that doesn't have some kind of struggle, they're going to say, "Nahi yaar, wo dekhne wale koi nahi hoga." Nobody will be interested. So any drama, including the divine drama, the Leela, in order for it to be interesting, has to have struggle. And that struggle is our minds. I don't actually think that God intended us to create so much external struggle, that we've actually got war and terrorism and poverty and hunger. I don't think in my mind that was the intention. I think the intention was the struggle would be in just our own minds. But anyway, that free will we have created, struggle across the planet. Not just for us, but for all species. But until and unless God takes our free will away, it's up to us to make the right decisions. It's why we meditate, it's why we pray, it's why we do seva, it's why we introspect, so that we get closer and closer to making the right choices and the right decisions. Not because we should, not because we're afraid, not because otherwise God's going to punish us, but because the right choices bring us closer to truth and closer to God. And the closer we get to truth and God, the more joy there is in our life. we realize that jo thoda sa maza aata hai in making the wrong decisions is nothing compared to the real anand, the real joy that comes in making the right decisions. Again, not because we then stick some pin on ourselves, labeling ourselves as virtuous person. It's not about a label. It's about living truth that feels so much better than lying or than doing the wrong thing. With regard to your children, though, of course you're going to make mistakes. You're human. What's most important as a parent is not that you never make mistakes. Because if as a parent you never make mistakes, that's a whole other complex you would give your kids. Then they would be afraid to ever make a mistake. Oh my God, well, my parents never made a mistake. They would feel awful. I think it's actually quite good for kids to see their parents make mistakes. But what's important is that they see you learn from the mistakes. That you don't cover up the mistake with a lie. That you don't pretend you didn't make it. That you don't blame someone else. I think honestly embracing our human condition is one of the most powerful and beneficial things we can teach our children. Yes, sometimes we fall down. And what do? We get right back up again. And then we're going to fall again. And then we get back up again. And we don't blame gravity for pulling us down. We don't blame the makers of our shoes that made the shoelaces come undone too quickly that we tripped. We understand, okay, I fell, it happens. And we get back up again. We honor, we own our mistakes. We're not too weak to apologize. Apologizing is strong. Owning our mistakes is strong. Denying it or blaming it, someone else, or covering up, that's weak. So jahan aapko lagta hai ki aapse galti hui, be honest about it. Tell your kids, hey, I realize, that I did this thing. It wasn't right. I'm so sorry. I'm going to try to make it better. Please don't follow this thing that I did. I feel awful. Look at all the ramifications and the repercussions of what I did. It's the best thing you can do as a parent. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Just own them. Learn from them. Let your children watch you learning from them. Because then they will learn in their lives to learn from their own mistakes. Beautiful. Any other questions? Yes, last. Namaste. इसको आप पकड़ लो है ना उनके लिए.
Sometimes in this spiritual path, I face a lot of fear. So when I face the fear, I'm just running away. I'm just restless. There is this heaviness in my chest. So how can I deal with that?
Fear is normal and natural. We are, I always say, the descendants of those who were afraid. It's actually very evolutionarily advantageous. If you are afraid of the lion, of the tiger, of the elephant, of the shark, you are much more likely to stay alive long enough to procreate and to have children. And so the genes that trickle down are the genes of those who fear. Because if we fear, we take fewer risks. If we take fewer risks, we are less likely to get injured or to die. Means we stay alive longer, means we procreate more. So we are the offspring of those who were afraid. If they were not afraid, we would not be here. So we honor, we bow, we celebrate their fear that we now experience in our bodies. But we, along with honoring it, we don't have to own it. They were facing threats to the physical body. Most of us don't face that these days. We don't have lions or tigers or bears or elephants or sharks that are, coming after us every day. Most of the things that we are afraid of have much more to do with injury to the ego than injury to the body. We are afraid of failure. We are afraid of humiliation. We are afraid of opening our heart in love lest we get hurt. This is ego fear. Acknowledge it, notice it, but do not let it drive the car of your life. Don't give it the steering wheel. Don't let it sit in the driver's seat. Acknowledge it. Yes, I realize I am afraid of being laughed at. I realize I am afraid of being a failure. And I'm going to do it anyway. Because I am more afraid of not living up to my highest potential. That is a worse outcome than failing. Everyone who has succeeded greatly has also failed greatly. In every field. You look in science, you look at Einstein, you look at famous authors. How many times manuscripts were rejected and rejected that ended up becoming classics? All of the great successes began as colossal failures. Choose anyone, research them. So we keep standing up. We face the fear, we move through it. On a spiritual level, as you mentioned, the fear is very interesting. The spiritual fear is also an ego fear. It's the ego that tells you, come out of meditation. Most people who have meditated for long enough have had at least one moment in meditation in which suddenly they are overcome by fear, that they're going to stop breathing, that they're going to go so far they'll never come back. And we find ourselves kind of coming back in fear. No one has ever died meditating. Or rather, I should say, no one has ever died from the meditation. You don't stop breathing. You don't go so far that you don't come back. But it's the ego that is afraid. If you get so deep in your meditation that the ego's hold on you gets weak, it's afraid of that. And so it's going to try everything. First, it's going to tell you, you better stop meditating, you left the coffee pot on. It's going to tell you, oh my God, those emails, you have to send them immediately. It's going to fill your mind with all of the things that you should be doing instead of meditating. Oh, you better get up, you're going to get stuck in traffic and be late for the meeting. Oh, your toast is going to burn. It'll start with that. But if that doesn't work, if you stay strong and you just notice that, you practice the awareness, well, it's going to keep trying. Okay, now it can't scare you by a coffee pot that's left on. Now it's going to scare you by, oh my God, you're going to stop breathing. It's going to come in the meditation and try to pull you out. Don't let it. Just notice it. The same way that you notice the voice that says the coffee pot is on, but you don't stand up. In the same way, You notice that voice that tells you, run, 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 stop. And you don't listen. You just notice it. Bow to it. Thank you for your concern. And you go back to your meditation. Beautiful.
May I ask one more question?
Sure.
Sometimes I feel very hopeless, very depressed, sad. So how can I open up trust in the universe, trust in God?
So there's a lot of ways out of the depression and the frustration and the hopelessness. Faith in God is obviously the best and the strongest and the highest. Until you develop that, though, develop practices that are easier and will come more quickly. For example, service of others is shown to be one of the fastest, easiest, most powerful ways of coming out of depression. Anybody can make food and serve it to other people. Anybody can go and help paint, a new battered women's shelter or plant trees. Whatever it is. Serve others. And as you serve them, try to see God in them. Try to see the divine. So the divine is feeding the divine. The divine is serving the divine. See that oneness. And then, in your meditation, in your prayer, allow that faith to blossom. For me, one of the greatest ways of faith blossoming is just looking at nature. Every time I look at nature, I am just so filled anew with faith. I think, oh my God, who could create such a perfect system? Look at a sunset, look at a tree. Look at how all of nature works. Look at how your body works. You dump junk into it. And it turns that junk into energy that fuels your body. Car can't do that. You dump mud into the gas tank of your car, the car is not going to budge. But how many people live for decades eating McDonald's, eating Pizza Hut, eating this, eating that? The body is this incredible thing created by the divine. Junk in, and it runs. Eventually you'll suffer, but you'll get a few good decades in there. Amazingly, it runs on junk. You go to sleep at night. You're in deep sleep. No awareness. How do you wake up? What's that system that wakes you up? Think about how perfect this is. How our bodies work. Just eating, digesting, sleeping. How that works. It's phenomenal. It's amazing. How we heal. Notice the amazingness, the miracles of the creation in your body, in nature. And the more you notice that, the more you will fall in love with the Creator. It's like if you wanted to love Monet, well, go spend time in a Monet museum. Look at all of his beautiful paintings. You're not going to fall in love with Monet just sitting on your couch at home. You've got to immerse yourself in the beautiful creation in order to fall in love with the Creator. Now, luckily, on your couch at home, your creation is there anyway. So with God, you can do it. But immerse yourself more and more in nature and just notice the perfection of it. And slowly, 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 that faith will grow. Every morning you wake up in the morning, ask yourself, who woke me up? Every time you go to the bathroom, who did this? Like, what an amazing system. How that works. You meditate You're supposed to be aware of your breath. Within 30 seconds, you forget to be aware. The mind is somewhere else. But you still breathe. Who's doing that? What an amazing system we've been given. Notice that. Allow yourself to just notice the miracles of the creation. And slowly, slowly, that faith and love in the Creator will blossom. Beautiful. Wonderful. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening. A beautiful morning and day to our family joining us online. I look so forward to seeing you tomorrow. If you were shy to ask your question today, you've got 24 hours to work up the courage, or you can give it in writing. If you want, you can give it in writing to our beautiful Seva team. You can give it to Preeti or Krishna Priya. They'll bring it to me in writing if you feel shy to ask it. And during the day, be sure to take advantage of all of the wonderful yoga classes, meditation classes, philosophy classes, the beautiful yagna, obviously the divine Ganga Arati. But fill your day with as much beautiful divine activity as you can. And I look so forward to seeing you back tomorrow evening. And so